It's 19 minutes past 7 and new research finds there's no optimum age to be starting school. The University of Canterbury study looked at the results of children when starting and then again a year later and found little difference in their academic achievement. For more on this, we're joined by Dr. John Boereboom. Good morning, Dr. John.
Morning, Hayley.
Can you start by telling us about this research?
Yes, we tested about 4,000 students starting school in New Zealand between 2012 and 2016. And what we found was that when kids start school, there's a huge range of ability that they have. The top 1.5% of kids can read fluently, and they can do mental arithmetic like 42 minus 17, and read words like require and creature. The bottom 1.5% can tell the biggest of 3 objects. So there's a huge range of ability, but that ability is not linked to age. So the idea that by starting school early you can get a head start, it doesn't really work. Now internationally there's a huge range of ages of kids starting school. In Northern Ireland kids are starting school at age 4, and in Finland, which is a country that repeatedly crops up with international comparison studies, kids don't start school till age 7.
Do you think there's any better age? Is 5 is kind of, as you're saying, a bit of an arbitrary number for people to start school. If they start too early, is that bad for kids? Or if they start too late, is that also, does that also negatively affect them?
Well, it completely depends on the individual child. So if kids start school too early, then the research shows that they could end up with problems later in their schooling, like hyperactivity and so on. Obviously, if they start too late, they get bored. But we've got a world-class early childhood curriculum in New Zealand, and the international research is pointing to the fact that there's a real value in play-based learning, and that in some cases it actually pays to delay the age of starting school.
So Steiner education does that, doesn't it? It's kind of got a child-centred approach. What do you think of that model?
Well, I think a child-centred approach is what's needed. I mean, the National Party tried to introduce cohort entry in the Education Update Amendment Act last year. And the idea was that kids could start school at the beginning of the term in which they turn 5. So potentially kids could start school at age 4. So
the new government are they trying to amend this cohort entry idea?
They are. And the idea of cohort entry, it's more geared towards administrative convenience for schools, because they can start all the kids on the first day of the term and it's easier for the teacher.
Right.
It was great for parents because in some instances you could return to work earlier if the kids start school at age 4, but it certainly wasn't necessarily good for children. There's a real rite of passage in New Zealand of starting school on the day of your 5th birthday or soon thereafter, and you feel special because you're the only child starting school at that time.
That's true, I suppose. Now, who should be deciding when kids start school? Should it be the government? Should it be the education ministry? Or should it be parents?
Well, I think it needs to be done by parents, really, in conjunction with the early childhood teacher or the kindy teacher, because they know what the social and emotional readiness of the child is to start school. And what this research does is it quite clearly shows that academic readiness is not the predetermining factor. Things like social and emotional readiness are much more important. And studies like the Dunedin study have shown that qualities like self-determination, grit, the ability to play nicely, to get along with others, are more important factors in determining the readiness to start school.
There's some great factors. Thank you very much for your time this morning, Dr. John Boereboom.
It's £23.